I call this meeting of the Northeast Independent School District to order. Let the record show that a quorum of board members is present, that this meeting has been duly called, and that notice of this meeting has been posted in accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code, Chapter 551. The time is 5:30 p.m. Or value of real property. Texas Government Code Section 551.074 to discuss personnel or to hear complaints against personnel. Texas Government Code Section 551.076 discussion regarding security devices or security audits, and the time is 5:31 p.m. The board will now reconvene in open session, and the time is 6:25 p.m. On behalf of the trustees, I would like to welcome you to this evening's meeting of the Northeast ISD School Board. This is a business board of the meeting held in public. We appreciate your attendance and request your respectful attention. We welcome your comments during the matters from the floor section of the agenda, or if you've signed up to address a specific action agenda item, you'll be called at that time. We wish to emphasize that this is a business meeting of the board, and while those in attendance may disagree about issues, it is our expectation that everyone will conduct themselves in a respectful and professional manner. We ask for your cooperation in avoiding disruptions. In the event that any person or group disrupts the meeting, a warning will be given, and anyone persisting in disruptive behavior will be removed from the meeting. Finally, I'd like to remind you that the mission of Northeast is to challenge and encourage each student to achieve and demonstrate academic excellence, technical skills, and responsible citizenship. Item 5, Invocation and Pledge of Allegiance. Garner Middle School, Ms. Monet, Principal.
Good evening, Mr. President, NEISD board members, Dr. Micah, executive staff, and community guests. I am Nicole Monet, the honored principal of Garner Middle School, home of the Yearlings. It is with pleasure that I'm here and able to introduce two talented and outstanding student lady yearlings who epitomize pride and other character pillars at Garner Middle School. Aurelie Bugali, I said it right, will be leading the invocation. Aurelie is an 8th grade yearling who is an exceptional student athlete. She's involved in multiple sports from cross country to volleyball to basketball and track. She is an avid student, a member of PALS, and a member of NJHS, as well as other outside activities. Aurelie is in attendance tonight with her parents, Mrs. Olivia and Jesus Bugalin, her brother Jesse, her niece Isabella, her nephews Jesse and Liam. Bugalin family, please stand at this time so that we can recognize you and the board can recognize you. Perfect. Thank you. We also have joining with us today Maite Alvarez, and she will be reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. Maite is enrolled in our dual language program at Garner. She is a very active member also and a member of student athlete where she competes in two sports, which are tennis and golf. While leading as a vice president of NJHS, she is also a part of our Avid Excel program, as well as a member of the orchestra program in our fine arts department, where she's played for 3 years consecutive as a violinist. Maite also maintains a busy life outside of school with other out-of-school activities. Maite is joined tonight by her parents and with her parents, I'm going to get this right, Galdalera Correa and Mr. Rafael Alvarez, along with her brother, Brian Alvarez. I've been working on my Spanish, by the way. Alvarez family, can you please stand to be recognized? Thank you. Areli, can you please come up with your invocation, please?
Good evening, Mr. President, NEISD board members, Dr. Micah, executive staff, and community guests. I would like to start off by saying I am honored and proud to be here. Please bow your head as I give this invocation. Heavenly Father, as we step into the month of March, we are reminded that spring is near, a season of renewal, growth, and the new beginnings. Just as the earth awakens with fresh blooms and new life, may this meeting be filled with fresh ideas, renewed purpose, and the hope of a brighter future for our students with community. Lord, we give thanks for the beautiful diversity that enriches our district, especially for all families who have come from afar bringing their traditions, values, and dreams to this land. Their stories are ones of resilience and hope woven into the fabric of our schools and our society. May we always recognize their contributions and ensure that every student and educator, regardless of where their journey began, is given the tools to succeed and the encouragement to thrive. Bless our teachers and staff with strength and patience, our students with confidence and curiosity, and our community with unity and understanding. May our schools be places of belonging where all children feel valued, supported, and inspired to reach their fullest potential. As we begin this meeting, let us lead with wisdom, listen with open hearts, and act with fairness and respect. May every decision we make reflect a future of opportunity and hope for all. In your holy name, we pray, amen.
Amen. Very good. Micah, come on up for our pledges, please.
Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Now let us give honors to the Texas flag. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state under God, one and indivisible.
Areli and Maite, if you all want to come up front, take some pictures, and get certificates. You all are welcome to stay, but you are also welcome to leave. It sounds like you have busy lives, so thank you all for being here. Appreciate it. All right, item number 6, recognitions. A president's comments and acknowledgement of special calendar events. We have this month and before our next board meeting, March is National Athletic Training Month. And as you see on social media and through the district website, our athletic trainers are some of the most dedicated, intelligent, and award-winning in the state. So kudos to them, and thank you for all that they do. March 7th, later this week, is Maintenance Worker Appreciation Day. So please help out your maintenance workers. where you can. Don't break the lockers or the toilets or anything else. That'd be great. April 2nd is Paraprofessional Appreciation Day. So please, for those that have paraprofessionals that help in their classrooms, please give them a thank you and a kudos. April 4th, National School Librarian Day. Vital part of our district that needs some appreciation every once in a while. And April 7th through 11th is National Assistant Principal Week. And so please, when you see your assistant principals throughout the day that week, give them a high five and tell them thanks for what they do. For my fellow trustees, we have a March 24th. I'll send out an email. It's one of our special meetings, but it'll be with Dr. Greg Gibson again, so I just wanted to put that out tonight so that you can look forward to that in a few weeks. But we'll send out some more information later. And then one other item that I will turn over to Ms. Villarreal. She'd like to make a quick statement before we move on.
Okay. A couple of weeks ago, I made a complete and total, seriously bad mistake. And I just wanted to apologize to our nurses. I just want you guys to understand that when we were faced with closing 3 schools, I was a little bit perturbed, to say the least. And when I get perturbed, sometimes I have this bad case of foot and mouth disease. And that pertains to our incredible nurses. And I appreciate all the nurses that reached out to me. You educated me, and that was most appreciated because I had no idea just how much you guys do in our district and how essential you really are. So I just wanted to say from the bottom of my heart, I am so sorry. It just because you guys are incredibly important, and the things you do, I don't know how you do it. I really don't. But that being said, the wonderful nurse that sent the gift, you know who you are. You just made my day, and I love all of you, and thank you so much for being patient with me. Like I said, sometimes I get a little bit of a temper, and I apologize. But, okay.
Very good. Thank you, Ms. Villarreal. Appreciate that. All right, item B, UIL 6A State Wrestling, Madison High School.
President Byer, members of the board, Dr. Mike, executive staff, and guests. Kelly Parker, our executive director of athletics, will address this agenda item.
It's been a really busy 3 weeks, but it's been a really good 3 weeks. We've had a lot of athletes qualify for state level competition at the state meets, and tonight we'd like to recognize some of our medal competitors. And we're going to start with Madison High School, Brandon Long. He's our UIL 6A State Wrestling 215-pound weight class bronze medalist. And with Brandon, we have his coach, Mr. Blaine Peterson. And then also Mr. Wernley, his principal, is in the crowd as well. That's it.
Congratulations, and thanks for representing Northeast so well. Item C, UIL 6A State Swim Meet, Reagan High School.
Okay, at the state swim meet, we had several swimmers from Reagan come home with some medals, and we're going to start out with Miss Montserrat Spillman. She's the UIL 6A State Swim Meet, girls 200 freestyle and 100 butterfly state champion. We also have Grant Lilly, who is the boys 500 freestyle state champion. And now for the ladies who represented the girls 400 freestyle relay silver medalist, Montserrat Spielman, who's there in front of us, Amelia Miller, Andrea Torres Sosa, and Miss Tessa Christensen. And with them, we have their coach, Coach Michael Rourke, and also Mr. Reiniger, the principal, is in the crowd today.
Thank you all for being here. Great job. Item D, 6A, Division II State Medalist Girls Basketball, Churchill High School.
So this past Tuesday, we had the state semifinals in 6A Division II basketball, and Churchill represented Northeast and Churchill and themselves with a lot of class. We'll start with Bella Curry. Miss Alina Hernandez. Miss Alexis Martins. Miss Rakaya Nelson. Miss Danielle Zuniga. Miss Amelia Ryan. Miss Michaela Walker. Miss Daphne Zuniga. Miss Ava Fernandez. Miss Chloe McCoy. Miss Jocelyn Mayers. We have assistant coaches, Tyler Gildner. Miss Laura Negrete. And head coach, Miss Jamie Grams. Thank you, ladies.
So while everybody's filing out, I will say congratulations to Churchill. Thank you for representing Northeast so well. I heard a lot of good things about the way you handled yourselves and competed really hard. So appreciate everything you did. Yes.
Mr. Byer, if I just may have a moment. What I think, and Coach Parker, I'd encourage you to hear this before you leave. I know you're trying to get out with them, but you don't get to. I think the neatest thing about that game, so myself and Mr. Jarrett actually were able to go down and watch that game. But afterwards, there was a scout from A&M that came down and said how impressed they were with that entire team, the way that they competed for the whole game. Because I will tell you, they were out. The size of the other team was pretty different from ours, and our girls played with such tenacity and such poise, and they never, ever gave up. And that scout was so impressed with what he saw from those girls. So congratulations, family. That you may not have heard that.
All right, item 7, matters from the floor. The trustees welcome comments from members of the public during this time of the meeting. Generally, board members do not respond to public comments during the meeting, although members may request further information or a future agenda item on a matter raised during public comment. As explained fully in the board's written procedures for this time, the matters from the floor portion is a limited public forum. Accordingly, speakers may present on a topic related to district business for up to 3 minutes, but are not permitted to make 1, personal complaints about an individual staff or board member that should be raised during the district's grievance policies, 2, a personnel action, 3, a student disciplinary matter, 4, a complaint about a particular student, 5, or pending litigation. Any person who persists in speaking on these topics after being directed not to do so will lose the remainder of their time to speak and may lose their privilege of addressing the board at future meetings. If you signed up to speak on a specific agenda item, you'll be called up when the board reaches that item. Please remember that this is a business meeting of the board. Any person or groups engaging in outbursts of any kind, causing a disruption to the meeting, will be warned. And if they persist, will be removed from the meeting. This is to ensure that all speakers have an opportunity to make comments without interruption and that the board members are able to pay full attention to speakers without any distractions. We also welcome written comments at any time, either through email at board@neisd.net or by mail care of the Superintendent's Office at 8961 Tesoro Drive, 6th floor, San Antonio, Texas, 78217. We had one person signed up to speak.
Number one and only.
I've waited a long time for that. Really long. I said I wasn't going to do that. But couldn't help it. Okay. President Byer, members of the board, Dr. Micah. I'm Patsy Osterline, president of the Northeast AFT. Next Monday begins spring break, but AFT members will be in Austin that Monday, speaking with the state senators and state representatives who represent us. The timing is on point, as on Tuesday, March the 11th, the House Public Education Committee takes up House Bill 3, the voucher bill. The assignment for Monday is to be certain that our representatives are aware of the harm a voucher system will do to NEISD and public education throughout the state. Little understood is that vouchers, besides undermining public education, undermine the teacher retirement system. Voucher proponents are aiming to have 4 billion for private schools by 2030. Private school teachers do not contribute to TRS, lessening the dollars available to support retired teachers and our support personnel, increasing the possibility of an insolvent TRS. Other major bills continue to undermine public schools. SB 26 puts the emphasis on student testing by funding teachers more and more through the teacher incentive allotment rather than salary. It does offer $5,000 to teachers in districts like NEISD, but then it offers $10,000 to those in small districts and charter schools. HB 2, the full finance bill, a basic allotment of $6,380 for an increase of only $220 from the current $6,160, which it has been at since 2019. To meet inflation, it should be at least $7,500. And for a quality education, it should be at $10,000. Besides being trustees, you are private citizens. We urge you to call your senator and representative to oppose SB 26, HB 2, and HB 3, and support HB 1257, which contains a $10,000 pay raise for teachers.
That's time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item 8, matters from executive session. A, personnel including but not limited to administrative appointments pursuant to Government Code Section 551.074. 1, possible action regarding routine personnel including but not limited to administrative appointments. Do I have a motion to approve items A, B, and C as presented?
So moved. Motion to approve.
Thank you, Ms. Landry. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Chigi. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Motion passes 7-0. All right. Item 9, presentations. A, intruder detection audit. Dr. Micah.
Thank you, Mr. President. As we discussed in executive session, we had 4 campuses that were visited since our last board meeting, and all audits were clean, no findings. Thank you.
I like to hear that. That's great. Item B, campus safety specialist update. Dr. Micah.
I'd like to invite Paul Duran, our Senior Director for Security and Safety, to the podium. As you all know, in the 88th, House Bill 3 was passed, which mandated an armed person in our schools. And so for those of you that may not know, we created a good cause exception because what the bill stated is we needed a police officer in every one of our buildings. Chief and I had talked for years that we weren't finding them, so we had to come up with a different solution. And between Paul, Mr. Duran, and Chief and I, we came up with the campus safety specialist position. So Mr. Duran is here tonight just to give you a brief presentation, kind of where we're at. And then I believe you invited a principal as well, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Yes, okay. So Paul, I turn it over to you.
Good evening, Mr. President, members of the board, Dr. Micah, executive staff, and guests. As mentioned, my name is Paul Duran. I'm the Senior Director for Safety and Security for the district, and thank you for the opportunity to talk to you a little bit tonight about our Safety Specialist program. As Dr. Micah mentioned, as targeted violence in schools has become more prevalent and received more attention over the last 20 years, the Texas codes have been revised in efforts to enhance safety and security measures on campuses. One element to these guidelines is related to the training and deployment of non-law enforcement personnel. These guidelines offer flexibility for school districts to implement safety and security programs that fit their own unique needs, infrastructure, and environment. As you already know, and as Dr. Micah just mentioned, House Bill 3 requires that school districts have armed personnel defined as Texas peace officers on every campus during regular school hours. However, districts can claim a good cause exemption from this requirement and utilize other programs that provide compliance and for more importantly, make our schools more safe and capable of emergency response. Our exemption was passed in August of 2023 based on lack of availability of peace officers to fulfill new vacancies given our own data and nationwide recruitment and retention issues in law enforcement at all levels. So districts can establish certain types of combinations of security staff and police to service the campus and have an approved alternative standard for HB3 compliance. So what we utilize is that Guardian program, but we've added extensive enhancements and modifications to the training and preparation, as well as we're recruiting and hiring very selective applicants who will be dedicated to the role of safety and security and not have any other responsibility. Under this system, the legislation requires that those that fulfill this armed security requirement have a valid Texas license to carry and complete a school safety certification course provided by a certified instructor in school safety. So the district board has the discretion to form a plan that works with their unique circumstances. The training the basic training under the Guardian program consists of four main elements: protection of students, interaction with police and other first responders, tactics to deny an intruder classroom or facility access, and methods to increase the license holder's accuracy with the firearm while under duress. So in the fall of '23, NEISD established the safety specialist position to supplement NEPD officers and assets and have a presence at all campuses. To be effective in this position, though, we knew we couldn't just hire a person with an LTC and check the required boxes, and it had to be the right person who believes in the mission and has a protective mindset, especially when it comes to our children. So we targeted our job description and recruitment only to applicants that have extensive experience in security operations, emergency management, military, or prior in law enforcement. So since the posting, we've had over 200 applicants and conducted approximately 80 interviews to meet our staffing requirements. The hiring process is thorough, and after initial screening includes an expectations briefing, a panel interview that includes an academic executive director, reference checks, fingerprint and background investigation, medical, physical, and drug testing, and psychological exam. Nearly all those that we've hired are military veterans, thanks in part to being in Military City, USA, so it gives us a rich applicant pool of service-oriented people, with the remainder coming from prior law enforcement, first responders, or professional security backgrounds, or a combination of those. And their job is not only to be prepared to address an active threat or violent incident, but also to be proactive in the prevention, protection, response, recovery, and to any other safety particular issue at a campus. So their training goes above and beyond state requirements and includes basic first aid training, stop the bleed training, incident command, de-escalation strategies, standard response protocols, and other emergency courses. This is followed up by continuous in-service training, not only with their tactics and firearm proficiency, but also other school safety topics. So the CSS does not have law enforcement authority, and they're not a substitute for police officers. In fact, their rules of engagements are very limited. However, we are preparing them to effectively intervene in an active threat until law enforcement is able to arrive. Their constant presence serves as a deterrent to violent activity and provides for the quickest possible time to contact with the threat for a faster resolution. As I mentioned, the CSS role is not a collateral duty. They are specifically designed to provide constant protection of the students and staff in school. They are encouraged to gain the trust and confidence of the students and staff and foster a positive, safety-conscious climate. They're continuously inspecting, auditing, and patrolling their campus grounds to ensure we are executing the district's safety and security policies and best practices, as well as meeting TEA required school safety standards. They are trained to become subject matter experts in our standard response protocols and to guide drills for those actions to make staff and students as capable and confident as possible in what actions to take during an emergency. So for an example, an incident at an elementary school campus, a fleeing armed suspect of an SAPD response to a nearby attempted robbery came into close proximity of the school's fence line. The safety specialist observed the suspect attempt to hide in the brush by the school and was able to communicate with responding officers the suspect's location while working with the campus administration to place the campus in the appropriate standard response protocol conditions. That incident proved to be just an effective coordination between all those involved, between the safety specialists, the administrators, NEPD, and SAPD that led to a successful outcome and a quick resolution so that students can get back to their normal day. Another example occurred when a safety specialist and a school nurse worked together to successfully intervene with another staff member in medical distress. They conducted likely life-saving measures with CPR and AED deployment to stabilize the person until EMS arrived with advanced life support. So unfortunately, we had the two safety specialists were invited. They had some childcare issues tonight, but they couldn't be here. But we do have our CSS coordinator and former CSS, Clever, if you don't mind standing really quick. Clever is our CSS coordinator, kind of manages the program. He is a retired Master Gunnery Sergeant after a 30-year career in the U.S. Marine Corps and brings a lot of extensive experience with foreign embassy protection and gives us a great point of view to enhance our security posture for our district as well. Thank you, Clever. So there are a lot of examples that the CSSs have been involved in positive outcomes in the school, from major incidents to minor ones. So this program keeps us in line with the legislative requirements, but really is so much more. They're at their campuses to protect, but also to bring a unique point of view to school operations and are helping to develop a comprehensive safety culture. They're developing relationships with students to be another trusted adult, available to discuss their concerns and help them feel safe. Studies on behavioral threat assessment show building and sustaining trusting relationships between staff and students promotes reporting of concerning behaviors and safer environments, which we know leads to more productive teaching and learning. So I'd also like to invite Ms. Nicole Rich, the principal at Canyon Ridge Elementary, has been so gracious to attend tonight's meeting to make some comments about how their safety specialist has impacted their school. Ms. Rich?
Good evening. Good evening. My name is Nicole Rich. I have the privilege of serving Northeast ISD as the principal at Canyon Ridge. About a year ago, we acquired our campus safety specialist, and it has been an amazing experience so far. So I'd like to share a little bit about what we're experiencing on the elementary school level with this program. We have seen a noticeable positive impact across our campus. First and foremost, our students and our staff just feel safer. They absolutely do. Having a dedicated safety specialist on our campus has provided a sense of reassurance, knowing that there's always someone there whose primary role on our campus is to ensure the safety and well-being of everyone in our school. The presence alone has helped prevent potential safety concerns, and it's allowed our staff to focus more on teaching and the student learning. Additionally, our safety specialist has strengthened our emergency preparedness. Regular drills, safety audits, and proactive planning. I believe we are the most equipped right now than we have ever been to face imminent danger or any type of emergency on our campus. It has also provided an extra viewpoint and expertise as we conduct our safety drills and checks in our emergency response protocols. This level of preparedness is invaluable in ensuring we can act swiftly and effectively when needed. Beyond ensuring safety, this role has really helped to cultivate a strong relationship with our students. Our safety specialist is a familiar and trusted figure on our campus, and he does foster very positive relationships with our students and our staff. He's always open to give a friendly fist bump and some motivating words to our students as they come in and out of the building at the day. Another really unexpected benefit we have found with this role is we have seen a positive impression it has made on our families as they come to tour our campus. Parents are consistently expressing how much they appreciated this added layer of safety and security, knowing that our district prioritizes safety and student well-being gives them a peace of mind, and it actually has been a key factor in recruiting families to enrolling their children at Canyon Ridge Elementary School when they have been shopping between charter and private schools. So in addition, this role is already making a really meaningful difference at Canyon Ridge, and the entire school community values this role on our campus. He even plays an important role as a member of my campus leadership team. And I'm confident this investment in safety will continue to yield some lasting effects, positive effects for our school and our district. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Rich. Yeah, I was at our campus not that long ago, and one of our safety specialists looks like The Rock with a beard and hair. But it was fun to see him. He was walking, I think, a kindergartner to the nurse's office, and he's holding the hand of this tiny little girl and helping her to get assistance. So, those are positive interactions that help the kids feel safer. And again, they're our best intelligence source for concerning behaviors. If we can get the kids to feel comfortable coming to a trusted adult that not only tell us, look, the back gate's not working, the lock's busted, this door's not closing all the way, to the fifth graders on their social media or their text groups and concerning those behaviors. So we'll have some really good positive interventions that we can make with students before anybody gets on the pathway to violence. So thank you, Ms. Ridge, for your work at Canyon Ridge. And thank you for the opportunity to speak with you tonight. I'd be happy to answer any questions if there's any.
Thank you, Mr. Duran. Ms. Rich, thank you for being here as well. Before we launch into questions, I just want to remind everybody there may be some questions that are not allowed to be asked. We don't talk about specific people or, I guess, campus procedures and some of those things. But Mr. Duran, I sure will let you know if he needs to answer it a different way.
Yes, sir.
You use the term collateral duty. You said this is not collateral duty, but it's. Can you help me understand what you mean in that context?
Well, traditionally, the Guardian program is meant for teachers and staff members that already have positions within the district. So it would be, for example, a teacher that went through the training or an administrator that went through the training. For us, it's not a collateral duty. They're dedicated only to safety and security. There's no other, that's their job description. They're not part of any other mission on the campus.
Ms. Shelton, and that I'm glad you picked up on that, because that's a big difference between our program and what many districts have done. We don't have to hire a safety specialist. You can just equip a staff member to meet House Bill 3 requirements. But when I hired Paul, and even before this legislation was passed, he came to me as a former Secret Service officer and said there should be an armed personnel inside of all of our schools. But he added a caveat, and he said in the hands of a highly trained individual. And so we use that. That's why when he discusses the training, it is far exceeding anything. The state, I really wish they'd give us another designation, because it's not a guardian and it's not a marshal. But we have to call it something, so we call it the Guardian program. But it far surpasses anything that is required of that.
Yeah, and we're fortunate to receive training from our own police department here and work a lot with the NEPD to make sure we're coordinating our efforts and deconflicting any friendly incident.
Ms. Landry, you have a question? Okay. As far as the, I guess the work between principals, were used to doing a lot of these, making sure that the drills were happening and that kind of thing. I guess how early in the process, as a principal, maybe Ms. Rich, you have to answer this, but I think you indicated they're part of your leadership team or something. Do you get the input from that safety specialist just to kind of plan out your year?
Yes, absolutely. And he provides reports to our team as well on a weekly basis. I mean, something simple is like, did you know it takes 7 seconds from the door in the back to click as soon as you walk in, unless you have someone pulling? That's something that we would never sit to analyze. So providing, also making sure we're on track, also giving us tips on how to make our drills better, and just finding those little things. But it's been a really valuable part of our team.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Anybody else have questions? Ms. Cox?
I had one. I was just wondering, how do you reach out to veterans programs to fill your positions, or what does that process look like?
We did initially when we first posted it. We worked with some military recruiting and advertised in veterans, association magazines for that. But actually, a lot of our hires have been word of mouth. Once we got a foothold into a few of the veteran organizations, or with people from a certain particular service, they were talking to their friends, and they came back and said, "Hey, look, this is a really good mission. They're there to protect. They serve their country for an extended period of time, and they're looking to continue their service in a civilian capacity." So that's really what we've been looking at.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, and if I may add, so one of the campus safety specialists at one of our campus served in the military for 20 years. And he said, I got to serve my country for 20 years. Now I get the honor of serving my community. And I think that speaks to this heart of service that they have to give back. But Paul, if you will, I think we can share it out here. So you all know the struggle we've had for different positions, right, to find a number of people. How many people, because again, we were struggling to find law enforcement, how many people have applied for the position?
Over 200 so far.
No, that's not the number we looked at the other day. Total, since its onset.
Since its onset?
Yes. That's the number.
The
I'm
total
looking
number,
at.
of, yeah,
Right.
over time, it's more like 337, I think was
Right. And you're hiring about one of every 6, I think,
we
somewhere like
screen
that?
through probably 80% of those to not
Mhm.
even get to the point where we're calling them back. And then the ones that we're calling back, we've done the 80 interviews to get to where we need to be right now.
That's, I think, the best thing about it is because of the demand for the position, he's been able to, with his team, be super selective about who comes in.
Yeah,
And-
and we're getting input also from the executive directors who are former
Mhm.
principals, so we know that there has to be a really good cohesive relationship between the safety specialists and the campus administrators to be able to work together to change some of the programs that have been pre-existing.
And Chief, I'm going to say something, but you correct me if I'm wrong. One of our concerns, or at least mine, I should say, was how were safety specialists and PD going to work together, and how were they going to view one another? I think it's all been extremely positive, and they see them as a great resource. And what's great is we're able to train our PD along with our safety specialists, so it's a coordinated effort. It's not siloed. And that's what makes it a very different piece, because from all of the folks I've heard from your officers, they've really liked it. At first, there was some trepidation about it and what it would look like and what it would be like. But ultimately, these two gentlemen have worked so well together that it's been a seamless, I would say, a seamless integration into
We've
the
had
system.
one safety specialist actually go to the NEPD to be an officer, and many others that are interested in following up with that as well.
Any other questions, comments? Well, very good, Mr. Graham, Ms. Rich, thank you all for
Thank you.
being here. Appreciate
Good
the
evening.
update. Item C, campus consolidation update. Dr. Micah.
Yeah, I'm actually, Ms. Chancellor, I think you're going to take this, right?
Yes, sir.
So Ms. Chancellor is going to take it away for us.
Mr. President, board members, Dr. Micah, executive staff, and guests, I do have a brief update to let you guys know about since the last time we were all here together when the board did approve the consolidation plan. The day after that meeting on February 11th, counselors were sent to those 3 campuses, to Wilshire, Clear Spring, and Driscoll, to offer students and staff whatever support they needed on that day. The next day, February 12th, school choice letters were sent to impacted families. And we're talking about 7 different schools here, not just Driscoll, Clear Spring, and Wilshire, but also the rising 6th graders, the current 5th graders at 4 elementary schools that would be going to Driscoll. As of last Wednesday, our district received 220 school choice applicants from those. Also on that day, magnet extension letters were sent to families as well. And as of last Friday, 4 Driscoll students applied for our magnet programs. The next day, February 13th, a meeting was held with impacted principals as well as district department heads. We discussed next steps moving forward, selected a date for open house, course fair night. Principals collaborated, came up with ideas to send out flyers, and come up with a date for what was going to happen so that everything could be simultaneous. Also, on February 13th, a human resources email went out to employees at those 3 impacted campuses, letting them know kind of what they would be looking forward to as next steps in the way of reassignments. Also, at the same time, we began the tall task, I would call it, of creating another program in Skyward. So Skyward is where all of the student information lives, and it talks to Blackboard, which is how we send out our mass communication updates. So typically you would put in an address and it would come back to a specific campus. However, because these campuses are still needing to be directed to those specific people for the remainder of the school year, we needed them to be in 2 different locations. So we needed them to be a part of a new group for new communication that was happening at their campuses they would be at next school year, but they also obviously still need to receive communication from their current campuses. So a lot of people went over it, and it's really a street by street, student by student thing that had to be done manually. So that was going on so that we could formulate that new group. On February 14th, another email was sent from HR to employees. This time, they could complete a questionnaire, and then they could also select their preferences for their new assignments moving forward. As of February 27th, 158 out of 162 responses have been submitted. On February 14th as well, Pupil Personnel Services sent out a second and third school choice option to those families. Earlier, we mentioned there were 220 that filled out the school choice. And as we've previously mentioned before, typically there's one selection if you want to do school choice. But in this case, we're offering a second and third option as well. So those second and third school choice option emails went out to families at that time. And of those 220, 67 second and third school choice option requests have been received. On February 20th, 2 directors from Human Resources went out to Clear Spring. They stayed there all day, and they were available in the event that staff had questions and had an opportunity to ask them one-on-one questions. On that day, one-on-one conversations occurred with 26 employees from Clear Spring. On that same day, an appraiser was contacted to assess the Nets property as well as the Alternative Center property. The next day, February 21st, our Skyward accounts were able to be verified numerous times so that we knew that our communication would go to the proper people. And our 7 receiving campuses were sent welcome letters from their new principals, and then they also were given dates for their welcome event, their elective fairs, and their campus tours. At that same time, social media posts were placed on the campus pages with that same information. Welcome letters were posted on our campus consolidation webpage, which is there on the main page of the website. And elementary flyers were also posted there as well with the upcoming events. On February 21st, Human Resources then went out to Driscoll Middle School, again, stayed there, available for any questions from employees. And on that day at Driscoll, 34 of our school employees asked HR questions in a one-on-one conversation. On February 24th, HR did the same thing over at Wilshire, and there 14 of our school employees took advantage of those opportunities to speak one-on-one with our HR directors. On February 24th, Clear Spring, Wilshire, and Driscoll sent special education letters outlining ongoing support and also the opportunity to sign up for one-on-one IEP and have service discussions. 2 days later, ESL Bilingual Department sent letters out to students who don't attend the consolidation campuses. They're attending somewhere else, but the consolidation campuses are their home campuses. So in the event that they were going to go back to their home campus, they gave them information about what that would look like moving forward. Also on that day, personal phone calls were made from the special education department to students involved in our structured learning environment. It's going to be relocated over to Wood from Driscoll, and that is 3 families. Those 3 students received those personal phone calls. On February 27th, that is when all the welcome events were held at all of our receiving schools. You can see there, I think you all have a copy, but Cerna, 12 families attended, Royal Ridge, 4 families, El Dorado, 25, East Terrell Hills, 6, Northwood, 25, Garner saw 25 students, and Harris, 205 students. These are all approximate numbers. And that brings us to this evening, and we're all here if you all have any questions about any aspect of the timeline.
Thank you all very much for putting that together. I think that's, at least in my mind, the sort of the direction we're looking, at least to get some kind of update on a monthly basis as we go forward with this, knowing that it's a big moving piece and a lot of things happening. So does anybody have questions? Ms. Shelton?
A couple. So on February 11th, First of all, thank you for doing this. I know this was something I requested. I really appreciate it, and I really appreciate the granular level of it. That's really helpful for me. On February 11th, how did we communicate to the schools that there were going to be counselors sitting there waiting on them? And let me tell you why I'm asking. One of my constituents had coffee with me the other day, and one of the first things out of their mouth was, we showed up to school and there were counselors just sitting there and no one knew they were coming. So the question that I said I would ask is, did we communicate that they were coming? And if we didn't, can we, as we go forward, make sure that the campus's leadership knows that someone from administration will be on their campus for whatever time period to do whatever it is that they're going to do?
Sure. So I'm going to say some things, and then Mr. Jarrett, if you want to kick it in. If you'll recall, Ms. Shelton, for us to have sent something out earlier would have presupposed that you were voting to consolidate.
Right.
We could not do that. And so what we did is we sent it out. We didn't send it out that late that evening because we'd already sent out a prior communication. But moving forward, now that that decision is made, there's no problem in us communicating it well
Perfect.
ahead of time.
That's
It was
excellent.
just a timing issue.
Okay, that's what I thought, but I didn't know the answer, and so I said I would ask the question. So I have a couple questions about the school choice. What's their deadline? I know you sent it out a couple times, but what's their deadline?
And Tyler can do the exact date, but it's in July. Tyler, is it the
It's the last Friday of July.
last Friday of July?
So they can continue, because I read that every 72 hours it's going out. They
Yes,
have
ma'am.
a little bit of time, right?
They have the same deadline that all other school choice applicants have, which is
Got
the
it.
last Friday of July.
Perfect,
We're just doing it on a cycle, so I've been able to capture everybody in a timely
Perfect.
manner.
perfect. Thank you. You made 3 different visits with HR to the schools, and I'm curious, particularly for Wilshire, what percentage of the teachers showed up and asked the questions from HR?
That's what,
Good evening. I don't have the exact total, but that would be a little bit, I think, less than half of their teachers, or about half
So
of their
less than
teachers.
half.
Mhm.
Did they know in advance that HR was coming?
Yes, so in the communication that we had emailed to them, we
Okay.
told them that we'd be available on site, and then principals were informing their staff as we were present that we were there for them throughout the whole day.
Okay.
And some, we stayed beyond the school schedule, so once school was out, we still stayed for hours after dismissal.
So people had the entire day and they had communication in advance that it was going to happen, that you
Yes.
were there to answer those questions. Perfect. Thank you.
And if I just may add, we also, if they weren't available, have been available through email. So some, even after those face-to-face, have emailed our directors for questions additionally. So if they couldn't on that particular day, they have contacted us, and we are following up with anyone that we did not see a response so that we can inquire with them about any questions they have.
Is there a general theme to the questions that are being asked, or are they very specific to individuals?
So some of the things that they wanted to clarify was their preferences, because within the forum, we said, please offer any additional information. So some of them wanted to expand a little bit upon that to give us some insight as to what their preferences were, or elaborate additionally. They just wanted clarification about timing of when they might learn about their reassignment. So those were kind of the most common questions we received.
Perfect. So then my next question is about on the 20th when we had the appraisal. And I think I now know the answer to this, but why is the appraisal necessary? And why do we have to pay for an appraisal? And that may be a commercial thing that I just don't get.
The appraiser hasn't come out yet. That was us procuring an appraiser on the 20th. We have not actually completed the appraisal. But the reason we're doing the appraisal is so that if we put the property on market, we know what a fair market price is. Otherwise, if we put it out to the market, we don't know when those bids are opened if they're fair market value or not.
And why do we have to pay for an appraisal? Is that standard procedure?
Just like with your home, if you do an appraisal on your home, you're paying someone to come out and appraise your home. There is usually
Yeah.
a charge.
It's like
to
$300.
that service.
It's like, okay, I get it.
Yes, there usually is a charge for that service.
Okay, all right. Okay, that just, ooh. On the 21st also, why did Wetmore send welcome letters? They're not as closing. Wetmore was sent welcome letters in the detail on the data. Wetmore.
Because those are the kids that would go to.
Got it.
The rising sixth graders.
The rising, got it.
That would have gone to Driscoll.
Got it. Okay. Okay. Understood. I am almost through, I promise. On February 26th, of the 3 families that were called, were they all spoken to?
Yes, they were spoken to according to my special education department.
And then the last question I have is on the 27th, I know that was a big event. I had wanted to go. I was out of town. I know some of my parents were. What are the options for another such event for people who were not able to attend that event on the 27th?
So, Ms. Shelton, great question. What's difficult about even securing that first date was because we want to ensure that all teachers are available with track meets, with games, different, fine arts, presentations and plays. It was really hard to find that time. So we ensured that's there. Now, for those that weren't able to go, and I've spoken to 2 parents that weren't able to go, they had conflicts, and so our principals are very open to providing time for them to come in when it works for the parents, whether that's during the school or after school or before school, to meet and to take care of some of those things. They can walk them around to the schools. We do that anyway with school tours when folks are moving into the area and want a tour. So we're offering the same types of situations. So one of the parents that I spoke to, both principals in middle school reached out to her, so then that way they can set up times for her to meet with them because she was not able to go on that day.
So it would be okay for me to tell my parents, you missed the 27th, please, it's okay to reach out to the school directly
100%.
to get a tour. Okay.
That is correct. And yes, and our welcome letter did say that.
It said that, okay,
yes.
perfect. Thank you so
Thank you.
much. This is a really, really great report. I appreciate it so much. And sorry for the sticker shock, Ms. Caldwell, on the appraisal.
Anybody else have questions? Ms. Landry?
Just one. Mr. Jimenez, the 220 school choice applicants, that's from the 7 schools, but from the 3 that were directly, well, and I guess they're all directly impacted, but the 3 that are being closed, do we know what percentage of the students wanted school choice or applied for school choice so far?
Do we have that number, Mr. Schussman?
So of the 3 schools that were being impacted, it's around 150. The 220 were from those 3 impacted schools. The rest were rising kiddos.
And how much is that percentage-wise of all 3 school?
For all of school choice? Oh, gosh.
Not for all of school choice, but the number of
But
students.
I think what you're asking is the number of students that are enrolled at those 3 campuses. What is
Yes.
that percentage of that?
Yes.
Oh, I would have to do the numbers. I can get that back for you. I don't know what
I
the
want to
enrollments
say
are
it's
for
around
schools.
20%.
Okay, so it's not huge.
It's about 20%.
Yeah, I would say it might be
Yeah.
less than 20, based
Yeah.
on the numbers we received.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Cox, you have a question?
Hey, just one more question about school choice. So just so I understand, sorry, I'm so sorry. I'm trying to help you get your steps in.
Yeah, getting plenty tonight.
So 220 people, 220 applied, 150 to 220. So the 67 came back around. Does that mean they didn't get there first?
No, ma'am, they were just offered the second and third
Okay,
choice.
so they just
Everyone
went
was
in.
offered that, and they continued to be offered that.
So
So those are the
67
ones that
parents said-
responded to the email and sent in their second and third choice options.
Okay, got it. And so I know the deadline is July 30th. Do parents wait?
But not July 30th, it's the last Friday of July.
Oh, sorry.
Yes, that's like the 25th, I believe.
Okay, the 25th, last Friday of July. So is that when parents find out, or do you do that? That's just the last
Notifications
time?
are hopefully going to go out early than most years, but typically they go out in May.
In May?
Early May, late April.
Okay. So they know before the end of the school year
Yes,
where
ma'am.
they'll go next. Okay, all right, thank you.
And Mr. Byer, if I may, it's 15%. Thank you, Ms. Lackhorn.
Thank you.
Ms. Thompson?
When about do you think teachers will know where they're going?
So of course, our aim is as quickly as possible. We want to give them assurances. We're already starting to evaluate resignations that we know and anticipate for the upcoming year. So I hope within the next few weeks, we'll begin to make notifications to employees and do so again as quickly as possible.
I would, so in April, part of this update will be the number of employees that have already been placed. Okay? So you'll get that. We're processing that right now.
Thank you.
Ms. Shelton?
I have a follow-up to Ms. Cox's question. If the students know in May, but the applications don't close to the end of July, is it viable that the people that apply for school choice in July would even get a choice?
It is viable, but that's been the process for years, is the last Friday of July. Just the last couple of years, because we extended the deadline. We used to have a very tight deadline, but now we also have folks that are moving in during the summer and folks that have make decisions that things happen in May and they are thinking about it, so they want to make that choice for school choice. But depending upon the school, and really at elementary level, that's where it becomes a little more tenuous, because we have grade levels that are specific to, you have to have a cap of, 22 to 1.
Right.
Making sure that they have spots available, or if they have a sibling that wants to go to that school as well. If they have, 2 kids in elementary, if we have a slot for a second grader and a slot for a fourth grader, making that work for them as well. So
Okay.
that's where it gets a little tricky.
And did I just hear you imply that we try to keep the families together if they both want to go school choice to the same school?
We notify them together so that we, like, especially if you have a kid of 2 kids in elementary, if we're going to approve one or other, we try to do both at the same time and let parents know.
Okay, thank you.
But it's dependent upon one kid versus another. We don't do them in group, but we try to.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions or comments? All right, I would say thank you all again. Echo Ms. Shelton's comment that this is a great summary that you gave to us, and I think it helps everybody understand all the moving parts and pieces and the work that everybody's putting in, and so thank you all for that. All right, item 10, Superintendent Comments. Dr. Micah.
Thank you, Mr. President. So I've got quite a few here this evening, but I will try to run through them as quickly as I can. So you may have seen we recently shared our Teacher of the Year finalists. Myself and executive staff went around, surprising folks in classrooms. We always do enjoy that because some of them are much more surprised than others, and they're not quite sure how to react. But our finalists, in case you don't know, are Jennifer Reed of Hebner Elementary, Rosa Carrillo of Stone Oak Elementary, and Melissa Cruz of Walsham Elementary. So those are our elementary finalists. And then at our secondary, it's Christina Reyna of Driscoll Middle School, Lorraine Flakes of Ed White and Data, and Leanne Henderson of Johnson High School. So congratulations to all. And then pretty soon they'll go through those interviews in order to pick the finalists for each level, of which at that awards ceremony that night, we will announce it. Congratulations to Aubrey and her team at Media Productions. The TSPRA Awards were recent, and they earned 11 gold and 4 silver awards, including a Best of Category for the best brochure from a district with more than 40,000 kiddos. Congratulations, we just found this out today, Matthew Trevino, who's a teacher out at Roan Forest. He is a finalist in the HEB Excellence in Education Award. And so he received a surprise visit today and a $1,000 check. And then later in May, the HEB will announce the actual winner in that category. So he's one of those folks across the state. This Saturday, Mr. Jarrett and I were able to attend the Mayor's Cyber Cup down at Port St. Antonio. For the first time, in a very long time in the city's history, we are sending 2 teams to compete at Nationals in Bethesda, Maryland. Who won the Mayor's Cup was Johnson in the open category. So open category is a super competitive with 5,500 teams nationally competing. They had the 7th highest score in the nation, so they're heading up there. A team from Roosevelt, again, I think this is their 8th year in a row that they will also be going to compete up in Maryland for the Nationals. They're all service, so it's a JROTC team. They had the highest score in the country in all services. So congratulations to them. Oh, but wait, we're not done. Kruger Middle School was the middle school winner at the middle level, and they had the top all-girls team at the middle school level. So congratulations to them. Well, I'm not done yet. I have more. And so thanks to Colonel for sending me this stuff, because sometimes it gets through, but MacArthur's JROTC Leadership and Academic Bowl, so it's called the J-Lab team. It's their academic team, is one of 32 teams from a field of over 1,700 Army JROTC programs worldwide to advance to the national final in D.C. this June. So congratulations to Mac. Reagan's J-Lab team advanced to the national final, finishing the top 40 out of those 1,700 teams. Johnson's Precision and Sporter Marksmanship teams advanced out of the Civilian Marksmanship program. Thank you for writing all of this, Colonel. In Anniston, Alabama, to compete in the national finals at Camp Perry, Ohio, later this month. Let's see. Johnson's marksmanship program continues as one of the elite JROTC shooting programs in the country, sending 2 teams this year to the national finals. So congratulations to those teams as well. So that's all, Mr. President. Thank you.
That is fantastic, the representation across the state and the nation. And I know, Colonel, a chance you at the Leadership Northeast lunch the other day, you mentioned that the J-Lab kids, they get questions from producers from Jeopardy, I believe, and so they're working complicated calculus equations in their head while they're getting asked questions on the clock. And so, yeah, very impressive. Very, very cool. All right, item 11, board business. A legislative update. As everybody is aware, we are in the throes of our legislative session up in Austin. Some of y'all have been up there to advocate for different things. I talked to Dr. Micah, and I thought it would be great from the district's perspective to hear what it is that we're looking at, what are the pieces of legislation that we're actively not only monitoring but even advocating for. I know we probably all have our individual things that we would like to see or have interest in, but I wanted to make sure we heard from a sort of a cohesive district level what the things are that Dr. Mike and his staff or others might be looking at. And in addition, at the community meetings, those of us that were able to attend, I think we heard a couple of times more related to the funding and the finance and the school consolidation. But, you know, what are we doing as a district to try to advocate for our schools and our families and students? So, Dr. Mike, I'll let you start, and then if anybody has any questions, we can dive into those.
And so, you know, I got to start with thanking Deb for creating a bill tracker a long, long time ago that we continue to use even as she's transitioned into that. Thank you to Susie Lackhorn for taking that mantle and really tracking them. But she is super excited that tonight you approved a director of government relations so she can pass that baton off in a hurry. And so, because there are a lot of bills flying around up in Austin. So I'm going to cover some that I'm really paying a lot of attention to. My worry is always those big bills that you're tracking. There's some smaller bills out there that may get passed that are going to impact us that maybe you're not as high on your radar. Those are the ones I always worry about. The things like, you know, look, everybody is following the ESA discussion, right? However you sit on that, the bottom line for me is, look, if you're going to do that, then you have to level the playing field. We have been competing in an educational marketplace since charters have come in on an unequal playing field. And so if they are going to do this, then they need to level the playing field and let us compete on a level match, right? That is what I continue to say about. You hear a lot of talk around teacher pay raises. I think I made it pretty clear last meeting, misheard, as I look out there. Folks, I am not arguing that teachers deserve pay raises, but folks, we've got to take care of people like Miss Hurd, who's a paraprofessional that is, I was talking with a teacher the other day, and he said, I'd put her up against any teacher. They are that crucial to those. They're not talking about those. They're not talking about our custodians. They're not talking about our bus drivers. They're not talking about the people. And Deb, I'm going to call out your folks that I featured in a video that were taking care of our HVAC systems. And I said, see, you're invisible people. And they said, yeah, but we like to be invisible. I said, no, you need to be visible because people need to know that we rely on you every single day to make things. We need to take care of those people. So my discussion isn't just focused on teachers, librarians, counselors, and nurses. It is about everybody in the system that if they weren't here, we would struggle. As I said, we got to take care of them all. I think the teacher thing is that talking point and that headline grab, but we need to talk deeper than that. I'm following closely safety. I am pleased, and I will tell you that they're doubling the safety allotment from 10 to 20, from 15 a school to 30. Really, when you look at it from our standpoint with our safety specialist program, it makes it whole. We're not running any massive deficit on that. We're still spending more on safety than that does, but that's something that we made a commitment a long time ago with our PD. What I'm focused more on is allowing a guy like Paul Duran, who is in the Secret Service and a federal agent, to not have to go through our Guardian CSS program in order to carry his weapon in a school. The law does not allow that right now. I'm pleased to see a few bills have been filed that are doing it. I went to Austin in the 88th session to try to get that done. It got nowhere. Hope's not a strategy, but I continue to call up to Austin to really ask for that. I would really, really encourage you, if you've not read House Bill 4, you need to sit down and read it. Folks, that bill worries me in a big way. That is accountability. And why it worries me is it gives the Texas Education Agency a lot of authority to come in and take over your schools and your systems. That concerns me greatly. It concerned me even more when I started to reach out to people and they hadn't read it. These are those things that I'm like, you've got to be monitoring all of this. But that's one I am following. And then the last one, because I am hearing a lot of it, and I wish, Susie, you're not in here. I think she's watching it. But Susie and I talked about this in the 88th, and Deb and I went to Austin and talked about this. There's a lot, again, about fund us on enrollment, not attendance. Folks, you better be careful what you're asking for. All right? Here is why that sounds great, because you're assuming that everything will be equal once we make that shift. It is not that simplistic. There are so many weights and so many other dollars that come in. So when I was in Austin, I heard one group that said, and I think he's dead right, you hear public schools get $15,800 a kid. That's not true. Okay? That's not. It's categorically incorrect. But we also don't get $6,160. And he's correct when he said that. He said on average across the state of Texas, we get about $10,800 a kid. So how does that other money come in? It's through the weights. It's through all of these other ways that we garner money. I say all of that because you could get enrollment-based funding. They change formulas, and you end up net zero or less. So what I have always advocated for and will continue to is commission. There she is. Hi, Susie, with your new fresh haircut. And I just made her blush. It's okay. But as I stated, because Susie and I spent a lot of time in the 88th talking about this and really, along with Deb, really looking at what would that look like. What I advocated for and will continue to advocate for is a study between sessions that look and thoroughly analyze a attendance versus an enrollment-based formula and how that would actually impact systems in the system. All right? Because folks, it is too complex to just yell for it and then they change formula funding and here's what I would tell you would happen. Well, we gave you what you wanted. Well, but we don't like it like that, and then we're not going to end up. So I really believe we need to really push upon a study that looks at what could it look like versus our attendance, and then allow us all to look at it. Let's be upfront and honest with it, and then file a bill in order to make it happen so that we have a chance to see what its true impact is. Because school finances is super complex, y'all. And a rushed type of decision may have some unintended consequences. And those of you that have dabbled in that legislative arena, their favorite thing is, oh, we'll clean it up next session. We'll clean it up next session. Except you wait for 2 years before they clean it up. And there's a lot of damage that's done in that. So I that is very different than what I think you will hear around the state. I will tell you, I've been going to Austin with the exact same, I'm proceeding the same way I did in the 88th. I'm going into offices to look for points of convergence with legislators, to try to help them see that I do believe in some of what they're doing, and then utilize those opportunities then to talk about things where I don't agree. But they are so accustomed to people walking in and just complaining that it really does throw them for a loop when you walk in and say, actually, you're doing some pretty good stuff. And let me tell you what you're doing. And then they're much more willing to engage you in a conversation about something that's maybe a little more people have heartburn around. And I will tell you, and Deb's my witness to it, I've gotten phone calls now about what's my opinion on this or what's my opinion on that, all because of what Deb and I did in the 88th, just by going up there and not screaming and yelling, but rather trying to work with them. So those are really the things I'm following. I mean, there's a lot of other little bills out there. There's a bill out there to give us a fine arts allotment. I think that's great. I think there's a lot of talk about CTE. I have some trepidation around that. Because I don't like how they're choosing CTE and how they're setting up. So, for instance, so all CTE IBCs are not equal. Okay, so that's what they say. That's okay. I agree. Remember that when Brandy came here to share with you regarding our CTE, we shared a story with you about some districts who put all students in a Microsoft class or a PowerPoint class, right? So I think you're seeing a bill trying to fix that. The problem is that the way it was presented is ASE mechanic is much different than a mechanic. Well, that's true, but I don't think I'm going to graduate an ASE certified mechanic out of any of our programs. Like that takes, and I know your son deals in it, like that takes a long time to earn. So we have to be reasonable. Like, look, I shared with you all on Saturday, or maybe yesterday, I don't remember. Some of our students coming out of ICSI are pushing upon 8 IBCs. Like, that's unheard of. Like, that's amazing, right? But not all IBCs should be pushed toward, because we're asking students to commit to an awful lot. So we'll kind of see how that plays out. So like I said, I don't know, Deb, the first day in the 88th, I think we said there were 800 bills filed, right? And this year was 50, right? And this year was 1,500 on day one. Like there's a ton. And so Mr. Lopez and I have discussed about every legislative session, we have the Texas Education Code that used to be about this thick and is now like this thick, and it will get thicker again after this session, because there will be a lot of bills, whether it's in taxation or somewhere else, that's going to touch upon us. Does that kind of help you where I'm looking?
I believe so. I think there's probably a couple questions, Ms. Chigi.
So what is the number of the bill, just so I can pay attention to it, that is the enrollment versus attendance?
Yeah. If you will, Mr., what I will do is send that to you.
Okay.
Okay? Again, Ms. Witten, I think, has already started the process of trying to get our new Director of Government Relations on board. Because I said we really need them to get in to start doing these things. Okay?
Thanks.
And then what my hope once he gets in is I will start having him give you kind of a week briefing, an email kind of going out to say, here's what's going on, here's what's been happening, kind of a week in review, and then maybe a week looking forward about where that is.
Okay. And so one other thing, when he talks about it's not 6,100, but we know it's not 1,500, the weights, is most of that not federal money? That's state money?
Do you want to answer it? So you can go with Mike.
He's talking about state money at that point in time. So those are the weights that are embedded in the state funding formula that calculates our entitlement.
Give me an example of a weight. I think of it as special ed and ESL and bilingual, you know.
You've got it right there. That's
McKinney,
exactly
but
what it
that's
is.
federal, right?
No, the state does it too. So there are certain buckets. So we get special ed funding in our entitlement from the state for special ed. Then we also get IDEA-B funding from the federal government for special ed. So there's a lot of duplication. Bilingual would get federal title funding. But there's also the bilingual allotment and the state funding formula. So there's duplication in it.
You good?
Yeah, and Mr. Byer, there's one other one, because again, there's a lot. One is about special education and increasing its funding. And I got to give a shout out to Mr. Jarrett and to Special Education Department for assisting TEA over the last year or so, maybe a little longer, looking at intensity model and funding us based on intensity rather than all students are equal. And so that's a step, hopefully, in a positive direction. I'm sure from Ms. Slackhorn, she has a slightly different take on it. But I at least, and again, I think as you think about going to Austin or talking to people, oftentimes we want to go to the perfect scenario where we think, and you got to sometimes think it takes multiple sessions to get there. Safety is one of those. They passed it. They did some money for safety. Now they realize they really should have given us more. So you got to think about it kind of as installments, not we're going to get there tomorrow, because the ledge doesn't move that fast.
Mrs. Cox, you had some questions.
Yeah, I just have two questions. One is, again, to attendance versus enrollment, because there's a lot of groups out there that are kind of pushing for enrollment. So what does that study session look like? Who does that, and how does that work? How does that happen? Because I know.
So typically, the legislature will just call for a committee and ask for a study. They actually did this very successfully leading up to the legislative session in 2019, and that's when they redesigned school finance. And they did that based off of a committee and their research and their findings in the study. And so basically, they'll do what they do now is they'll invite people to testify and get TEA to provide a lot of reports and the Legislative Budget Board and all that, and put all that together. And then that committee will provide recommendations, a lot like how we do committee work here at Northeast. And so those recommendations then, when the legislature sits down at the next session, they can look at those recommendations and incorporate them into their bills.
So Ms. Cox, like, if you think back when Mr. Jimenez and I went up and testified at the Senate Education Committee, I was up there testifying about our campus safety specialists and about the allotment. What you then saw was a change to that, right? So that's those interim charges in between the sessions where they start to work through some then they invite different people in to testify, and they're fact finding and gathering information, and then ultimately leading to not a bill, but this needs to happen, this needs to happen, this needs to happen, and then people usually on that committee, somebody grabs on and writes a bill.
Yep. Okay, got it. I just have one more question. So are we following any bills about teacher safety in the classroom? I think there's an HB 1081 Just trying to get ahead of,
Yeah.
just trying to
Yep.
provide some direction for teachers. and
Sure.
classrooms.
So in the 88th, I asked Representative Allison to carry a bill. I've been back to Austin to ask for that bill to be resurrected again. I'm waiting to see if it does. But there are some other bills out there, correct, that go in. The bill author matters deeply. And so we'll kind of see how that goes. You're going to see, and the one I forgot, because again, there's so many, there is a lot of energy around Chapter 37, and that's regarding student discipline. Okay? You're going to see a lot around that topic, and we'll see what ultimately comes out of that.
Okay.
Does anybody have a question? Ms. Shelton?
Yeah, Dr. Micah, you said you were going to give,
Oh, it's on. Sorry, couldn't see it. My fault.
you were going to give Ms. Chijia a recap or a link for one of them, but I feel like if you would be so kind, if you could just copy us on all of them and all the ones that you said you felt like were important.
Ms. Shelton, as soon as I get that Director of Government Relations on, we are going to start sending you stuff.
Okay.
But what I don't, look, some of these bills are hundreds of pages long, okay? So I don't have a problem in sending you the bill, but what I want to send you is a synopsis of key points so that you're not reading through all of it, because I will tell you, I try to tackle a few a day.
Right.
Because some of them are complex, and sometimes I have to go to Mr. Lopez to say, what does that actually say? Because I'm not sure I'm following it.
Right.
So once he gets on, in fact, I spoke to him earlier tonight, and I said, once this, if the board votes and approves you this evening, here are the things I need from you, like pretty fast.
Right.
I know you won't be officially on board, but you're on board. So here's what we're going to start to do. Part of it is that.
And I would just ask, I would love a synopsis, but I've been trying to find House Bill 4. And there's one from 2023, 24. There's one.
You got to do House Bill 4 from the 89th session. So
right, and I'm there now.
Yeah.
But just kind of where exactly to go,
Sure.
because there's a lot of high level without giving me something to really read would be helpful.
Sure.
I also want to add, we get, TASB sends out an email to us, and that generally, it's going to be, I think it tracks every education-related one, but then we also get an email related to property taxes as well. And if you look on that, there's going to be, again, 200 different pieces of legislation right now. And as those get whittled down, our new governmental relations person will be able to help us focus, I think, a little bit better.
And Ms. Caldwell, I'm pretty sure we can just send the link. There's a specific link I go to, I know, to search a bill, right?
Right. Texas Legislature Online is the place to go to watch hearings, to track bills. It will always default to the latest session you are in, so it will always default to the 89th, but you can also drop down that menu and go back to previous sessions because everything resurrects itself. So always go to, rather than Google, because Google doesn't give you, you're right, it gives you lots of different returns. Just go to Texas Legislature Online, and you can type in the bill number right there in the middle of the page. You can also, if you don't know the bill number, you just know a term like student discipline, that's also an option, and they'll give you that as well. And you always want to look at the latest file of a bill because the last one in the list is the most recent. So right now you just have the filed versions, but over time as it progresses, you'll see different versions of a bill, and you always want to go to the bottom one on the list.
Any other questions or comments? All right, well, thank you for the update, and I would encourage folks that are watching and in the audience, if you have a particular piece of legislation that you're interested in, to advocate for your community and yourself, and reach out to your representatives, reach out to your senators. And as public education, I would hope it was in favor of public education, but you have that voice, and so we encourage folks to be involved and pay attention to what's going on. So thank you all for the update. Item B, discussion regarding regarding executive orders impacting education. I had an email request and a second to discuss. It was the executive orders signed by the president that pertain to operations and the ISD. Three items of particular interest were related to gender identification, critical race theory, and DEI. And Ms. Villarreal, you're the one that had requested this item. And so I was going to have Mr. Lopez kind of go through, but if you have some specific questions or anything that you'd like him to focus on, you can speak now or wait until after he's done.
Well, it seems that, executive orders are flying out of the White House at a, like at lightning speed. And, a lot of them, I'm looking at them, a lot of them are good, some maybe not so. But, I also, I'm kind of concerned because, he's talking about wasteful spending, and it says under radical transparency about wasteful spending in this EO, President Trump directs agency heads to be brutally open about wasteful program spending so that taxpayers can see. And I was wondering, see where their money's going. I was wondering if maybe this might signal something to us to say, hey, I know that Dr. Micah runs a really tight ship, and he has been fairly brutal in, leaning down our budget. And I was wondering if it might be incumbent upon us to go ahead and share what he has done to, line item by line item, to lean out our budget so the community knows that, hey, we are trying, after that brutal school closure that we just went through. I want our community to feel like, we really do care about this district and we don't want to see another round of that. So what I'm trying to figure out is, using his executive orders so that we can, show actually to the federal government too that we are being compliant with what they're doing. That's one. And then I'd also ask, have we taken a look at our federal funding and federal grants to see what might be considered wasteful taxpayer spending? This is something that, this is a big hot point. And I get it, times are, really tough and people want to know where their money is going. And do some of these programs affect us? And even if not, what stance can we take?
So the executive orders that are dealing with uncovering wasteful spending are really dealing with the president ordering the heads of the various agencies, the Department of Education, Department of Defense, other major federal government agencies to review and identify areas where there has been what they call wasteful spending. That's what I would call very much at the macro level, where they're looking at their own departments and figuring out ways to prune some of those expenses. And they're trying to make a determination as to what's actually useful, what is the taxpayer getting a benefit from. You've seen a lot of information about federal workers being laid off or pruned, where there are determinations being made that they're too bloated. So those are all areas that are being looked at. It hasn't really bled down into where, okay, now the president has said anything about local government entities doing the same kind of thing. That's not to say that certainly that's within your purview as the Board of Trustees to determine, if there's certain information that you want from the administration, you certainly can request that. But in terms of what those executive orders are doing with respect to the taxpayer spending, with the wasteful spending, that's all really sort of at the macro level trying to figure out whether those agencies can start to prune down some of that. As far as grants are concerned, I think that there's been somewhat of a pause of a review of grants that are going to states and or local educational agencies to identify whether, for want of a better term, whether or not taxpayers are getting a bang for their buck in terms of what it is that particular federal grant geared to do. Is it accomplishing what it is setting out to do? Is it even something that the federal government wants to continue to fund through a grant program? But I will just tell you, there's hundreds, if not thousands, of grants. Now, Northeast ISD may have some of them, and of course, I know that that's something that the budget folks can talk to or speak about, but with respect to what they're doing with that and whether or not those grants are going to continue, those are decisions that are going to be made at that federal level.
Okay, I have some other questions, but I would really like an answer to the 3 questions I was asking in the email that I sent Mr. Byer. So about the DEI, I believe it was DEI, transgender.
Gender identification, DEI, and critical race theory were the 3 in the email.
Okay.
So there are, as far as the DEI, okay, there has been an executive order that is specific to that, and that is Executive Order number 14173, which was issued January the 21st. And that is where the federal government has been ordered by the president to end DEI programs at various levels of government. And that, again, is at the macro level, right? They're looking at that. You heard a lot in the media about government agencies that may have been undertaking DEI-type programs. Those have been ordered to be ceased. But what's going to happen is sometime within the next 120 days of the signing of the executive order, the Secretary of Education has been ordered to come up with sort of a plan to end any race or national origin or other DEI programs that figure out a way to ensure that continued federal funding of local education agencies doesn't go to those agencies that are engaging in any DEI programs. So that's really the issue with DEI. Northeast ISD, to my knowledge, and I've spoken with the executive staff about this, we don't have DEI programs. It hasn't had DEI programs. All it has had in its policy manual is simply compliance with the laws that prohibit discrimination on the basis of race or national origin, and that's all it does. But with respect to the operation of its educational programs, with respect to the operation of its extracurricular programs, it does not make decisions on that based on people's race or national origin. All students are to be treated equally. That's the way it works.
Do we have any programs that, because one of the biggest gripes was that they were renaming DEI and calling it something else to try to bury it. Is there anything that we have anywhere that could be comparable to DEI or actually be DEI that is named another name?
No. I mean, I know that there's been reports in the media generally about things like social emotional learning is a way that they're using to cloak what they're calling DEI programs. But social emotional learning is, at least the way that I understand that phrase, is not utilized based on anyone's race or national origin. It's merely about paying attention more towards students' mental health and making sure that students have what they need to be successful in school. But with respect to, again, the operation of the district's programs, I am not aware, and again, been talking to the executive staff folks, I'm not aware of any programs that are based upon promoting any one particular race or national origin or any other protected class over another. I mean, that the intent is always to ensure that everyone has an equal opportunity, but that's all it is. No one is making decisions based on anybody's race or promoting one particular race as better than another. And that's really the focal point of what these executive orders have been, is that everyone has an equal opportunity. And decisions are being made for participation for all of those things based on merit and based on, at least in this district, all students have the opportunity to participate in extracurricular activities equally. And I don't see that as being anything that the district is looking to change. That has been the way it has been, at least since I've been involved with the district and representing the district for a long time now. That's not something that we have seen, and certainly if there is an allegation or an issue that comes up, we'll look into it, and I'm working with the administration, we'll address anything that needs to be addressed.
Perfect. And there was another I'm sorry, I'm not looking at that email. It was over a month ago.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, Ms. Landry.
Sorry. So regarding the DEI, how does that regulation and the policies of the district cross over into the PTA? Is there any connection there, since it's
Right. PTAs are a separate entity from the school district. So it's intentionally structured that way so that PTAs have their own governance. Obviously, there's a good relationship, a solid relationship, because PTAs are what we would call school support organizations, right? But they are separate and apart. So they have their own way of operating, their own governance. They are not required to follow the same policy manual that the district does. That's not to say that they can violate anything, but ultimately they are a separate entity. What we are going to focus on and be concerned about is what's in the Northeast Policy Manual that applies to all the school district's educational programs and opportunities and extracurricular activities.
okay? Thank you.
Okay.
I can't find my email that
Oh,
I sent you.
the
I'm
last one was
sorry.
gender identification, I believe.
Right, gender identification.
So there was a executive order, and it was 14201. That one was issued on February the 5th. And that was the executive order that crafts, and what you see with a lot of the executive orders that pertain to school operations, and there aren't that many, but there are some. They talk about it in the terms of, okay, we're going to deprive federal funding of an agency or a local educational agency that does not comply with whatever the thing is dealing with. As an example, there's an executive order that says that we need to look for ways to deprive federal funding of any educational institution, K through 12 or institute of higher education, that conditions participation in any educational opportunity on taking a COVID-19 vaccine. So that's the kind of thing that they're looking to say. The punishment for you, if you violate that, is going to be potential deprivation of your federal funding. So along those lines, that 14201 is the one that says that they're going to be looking at ways to issue regulations to deprive federal funding of agencies that allow, for example, biological males to participate in women's sports. But the truth is, at least in Texas, Texas sort of addressed that issue 2 sessions ago. So in 2021, a bill was put into law that prohibited biological males from participating in women's sports. So in some ways, as far as Texas is concerned, the executive order, while it may have application around the country, here in Texas, that's not been an issue. And so Northeast is compliant with that. And that's a rule that applies to any interscholastic athletic competitions. So anything that's governed by UIL, which most athletic endeavors here at Northeast, just like any other ISD, are governed by UIL, that's already sort of been addressed. So it's really not a change to anything, at least as far as Northeast and really most Texas ISDs are concerned.
Okay, that's good. I'm hoping people are hearing this, that we've already, gone down this road and said no. So that's why I'm asking these questions, because
Absolutely.
I want our community to know that their kids are safe in our schools. So, and there was one more. I'm sorry, Mr. Byer.
Critical race theory.
Critical race theory.
Critical race theory has never been an issue that I am aware of at Northeast ISD. It's never been part of the curriculum. What I would say on, again, kind of tying in whether you're talking critical race theory or DEI, I mean, when it comes to the curriculum that is taught at Northeast, it follows the TEKS, which is, of course, state approved. So the state has really been focused on ensuring that those kinds of discussions are really not entered into in the classroom with respect to the curriculum. So as far as the district is concerned, again, critical race theory is not a factor. Were there to be some individual teacher or classroom where those kinds of discussions get entered into, as long as the school district is made aware, Dr. Micah is made aware, we will look into that and address that appropriately. But we have not had any kind of major complaints or issues. And again, the curriculum that is taught is going to be something that's approved by the state.
Yeah,
And
if-
critical race theory is just not a part of that.
If I'm not mistaken, critical race theory is a graduate level.
Yes, I mean,
collegiate
when you
course.
start talking about what critical race theory actually is, yes, it's
not
something
taught
that
in
is
our high
taught at the college level, at the graduate school level. It's really not something that's played a big role in K through 12, certainly not in Texas. So Northeast has never had that issue or that's never been part of the curriculum. And again, the curriculum that we do use is dictated by the state. It's the Texas Essential Knowledge and Skills, the TEKS.
Is there one thing that they did when we had the issue with the books, and we implemented a see something, say something protocol? Is there a way to make our community feel comfortable about sending their kids in, that they know that they're not going to be groomed, that they're not going to have critical race theory, DEI, any of these things that the media is pressing and saying that, public schools are just doing this to your children? Is there a way that we could implement some sort of a protocol like we did with the books, so that if there was something that happened in one classroom, that could be, reported and taken care of?
Well, I think it's kind of a twofold answer to your question. I think one, having this discussion here today, right now, I think is hopefully helping to ensure those who are watching that these are not things that are factors at Northeast ISD that should, cause anybody concern about those issues happening. With respect to when people can report concerns, I mean, certainly they have a variety of ways. They can certainly let their campus principal know that there's an issue. If they have a concern about something that's being discussed or taught in a classroom, they should go to their campus principal. They can always make a report to Mr. Jimenez or Mr. Jarrett. They can submit a report or write an email to the superintendent. There is a hotline, of course, that the district operates that people can make reports of all sorts of things that they may have concerns about in the school district. And as long as it reaches Dr. Micah and his team, then we'll all work together to ensure that that is investigated and addressed. And certainly the expectation is that the curriculum that gets taught is what is approved by the state and approved by the Board of Trustees and implemented that way.
Fantastic. Let's see. Now, this is something that is near and dear to my heart, and I was very excited when I heard about it. It says, America is well positioned at the forefront of innovation and entrepreneurship, and our history of ingenuity and grit is unrivaled. Over the next 4 years, we will rebuild our economy, raise wages, and strengthen families. I love that. And it says, my administration will invest in the next generation and expand access to high-quality career and technical education for all Americans. And we're doing a great job with the CTEI, whatever that thing is, which is amazing.
ICSI.
Yeah, ICSI and other things. I mean, we've got incredible programs here. But I was introduced to a program that's, for the youngsters, I think it's STEAM. It's the STEAM program.
Mm-hmm.
And that seems to go along with what he's asking for, is get kids interested in, these higher levels of thinking. And that's something that I'm going to be requesting this evening on that. But and then this other one, in the ending radical indoctrination, it says, parents trust American schools to provide their children with rigorous education and to instill a patriotic admiration for our incredible nation. Mm-hmm. I happen to agree with that. I want our kids to love this country. I love that, and the values for which we stand. In the recent years, however, parents have witnessed schools indoctrinate their children with radical anti-American ideologies while deliberately blocking parental oversight. Okay, how do we address that one?
Well, there's really a couple of things. So there's an executive order, and this is 14190, that talks about re-implementing what they call the 1776 committee at the federal level. And that is essentially a sort of a committee that's going to develop what they're calling patriotic curriculum, things that the federal government may look at to condition further federal funding to schools on their implementing, either at the state level, which then goes down to the local educational agencies like Northeast ISD, or directly to the local educational agencies to incorporate aspects of this patriotic curriculum. That's still in the very early stages, but that is something that executive order sort of restated. Now, with respect to parents being able to get and be entitled to all of the information about their children in school, that is something that we have discussed extensively, and certainly part of my training when I provide training to administrators in the district is the state, even before the president got involved in this, the state has made it very, very clear that parents are absolutely entitled to all of the information that schools may have, not only about their children's education, but anything they may be aware of when it comes to health, when it comes to medical information, when it comes to anything that the school district may have, that's shared with parents. And so that's the expectation of the school district, is that that information is available, and certainly is something that we want to partner with parents to do. And I think a good example of how that was done was how before the law ever required it, we worked with Dr. Micah and, of course, the executive staff with the library book issue to sort of make it clear that parents now have the ability to review what their children are checking out, to put limitations on what their kids can have access to in terms of library materials. And so those are just the kind of things that I think the district is already kind of at the forefront of ensuring that they are partnering with parents on those issues. So that's really what I see sort of going forward. Of course, as more regulations come out, I think the Secretary of Education was going to be confirmed sometime, if she hasn't already, then she's going to be up for confirmation. I think as soon as that happens, I think you're going to start to see a lot more guidance coming out from the federal government. And I'll continue to monitor that and work with Dr. Micah and the team to make sure that if there's something that the district needs to address, it'll get addressed.
Are we considering going with a more patriotic sort of curriculum?
I mean, that's going to be something that once the federal government releases whatever that expectation is going to be, and whether it's going to go through the states or whether it's going to go through the school districts themselves, we'll just have to wait and see in terms of what is released when it comes to that.
And every student is required to take government in high school. One of the required classes is government and economics. So there is a government class that my daughter's taking next year. My son took a few years ago. So we have some of that already covered.
Okay, so like I said, I'm asking for our community to let them know that, we are ahead of the game, essentially. So, thank you so much.
I think Ms. Shelton, you had your mic on first, and then Ms. Landry will get.
Thank you. Earlier, you mentioned that I don't know if we meant to go here, but there was impact for federal grants, which we've all seen. And I'm actually looking at Ms. Lackhorn because I know she'll be the one to answer this question. We have several federal grants that we've been awarded. And so my question really is, are we impacted, are the grants that we've won impacted by the rollback of federal funding that way?
So currently, as it stands, the budget for the year that we're in was already passed by Congress and approved, so that funding was already allotted for us. The Congress currently is working on next year's budget, so we have to wait and see what that funding allotment's going to look like. You get a monthly, with your board packet, a federal grant report, so you can see it's sizable. We get $20 million worth of Title I funding and $12 million worth of IDEA B, which is special education funding. Those two buckets alone cover about 300 staff members, so they're very important pieces to the overall budget. We will continue to monitor, but we go through this process every year as the federal government debates their budget, and almost every year we're not going to fund it all the way, we're going to fund it this way, we're going to fund it that way. So there's always that level of debate. So we'll just have to wait and see where they end. But they fund on an October to September timeframe. So we will have funding already allotted to us through September.
Is that it? Yes. Good, all right. Ms. Landry?
Okay, so I want to go back a little bit to Ms. Villarreal's question about the patriotic curriculum. Can you explain to us House Bill 1605 and how that touches on, or if it does touch on the patriotic curriculum, and what the state's done with the Bluebonnet curriculum, and if that applies?
So the state and the Bluebonnet curriculum and all of those issues, that's something that has been almost exclusively done by the state, and those are things that are being considered by the state. The 1776 committee that has just been resurrected through this executive order, that hasn't, like I said, they're still working on trying to see what they're going to condition any federal funding on certain types of patriotic curriculum coming from the federal government, again, either through the states or through local educational agencies directly. That's not been released yet. Whatever is happening with the Bluebonnet curriculum and others is not really tied into what's going on with the executive orders. It's really more of, again, these are just options. The Bluebonnet curriculum is something that the school districts have an option to adopt, and whether or not they want to implement it at whatever the grade levels are going to hit with that or go with that. But with respect to the 1776 committee, like I said, that's something that's a little bit different, and that's something that has been resurrected, and we'll just have to wait and see what the federal government's going to say about that.
And so House Bill 1605, what is that?
That one I'm not sure about that one I have not looked at. Again, there's a lot of bills out there, so I haven't looked at that one, but I'll be happy to take a look at that and get that information back to you.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Looks like Ms. Caldwell has a response.
So HB 1605 was the curriculum bill that passed in the 88th session by Chairman Buckley. That establishes an allotment, and Mr. Jarrett can certainly talk to it a lot more eloquently than I can, but that establishes an allotment to utilize high-quality instructional materials vetted by TEA in addition to anything else you adopt as a board. It's not exclusive to patriotism. It's not exclusive to any other particular curriculum. It's English, math, writing, science, social studies. It's all of the core curriculum that supports the TEKS. But it's high-quality curriculum that has been reviewed by the State Board of Education through a rubric that they adopted so that they can then pass it on to school districts saying, this is what we recognize as high-quality curriculum.
And when does that, so is the curriculum that we use today part of that list of the high-quality curriculum?
So we've always written our own curriculum. So we take the standards and the TEKS and we break it down, and that's what we deliver to our students. So the state, during the pandemic, a lot of districts wanted a curriculum that they can turn to, open the book up and teach, because they don't have as many staff members or resources like we do. So the state designed curriculum and labeled it high-quality instructional materials, still giving the autonomy to each individual school district to make sure that it reflects your school district and your district needs. So the way they did it, essentially, and I've had to wrap my head around it myself.
Mr. Jarrett, I don't want to, I'm going to interrupt you. I want to make sure we stay on the topic of the executive orders and not get into a curriculum discussion tonight, because that's not part of the agenda item.
Okay, I just
so
wanted to
if we can-
understand House Bill 1605.
Yeah,
if
and that's
those
also not an
related.
executive order, so if it's tied to the executive order, then let's talk about that,
Gotcha.
but not debate the actual legislation itself.
Thank you.
Yeah, and that's why I was explaining that this executive order that I referenced earlier, that's, again, relatively new, and so that's going to have additional information that's going to come out in terms of patriotic curriculum that, and we'll see how the federal government decides to tie federal funding to that, or perhaps they may do it in some sort of a grant where you can avail yourself of the grant if you incorporate certain aspects of their curriculum, but that'll be forthcoming. Yes.
Any other questions? I guess I did have, Ms. Landry, you mentioned, I guess, something related between DEI and PTA and the district. Is there an issue something that has come up that we need to be aware of, particularly
And I
related to one
don't
of our
know-
schools?
I don't know if this is the appropriate forum, since PTA is a separate entity.
Okay.
But on one of their websites, they specifically discuss how they use DEI.
Okay. Well, yeah, and as it relates to the school district, yeah, I think Mr. Lopez provided
Yeah,
our
that's
stance on that.
I mean, if that's something that PTA is doing, that's up to them, but that's not the Northeast ISD.
Dr. Mike, may I just say something to it? I get really frustrated that something happens somewhere in this nation and magically it's here in Northeast. My administration and I have worked our tail ends off, not only to give parents their right to academic records that they have every given right because they are the child's first teacher and they are their parent. That's why we work so diligently through the library book process. That is why that vendor now has taken that nationally, because nobody had figured it out, but we did. But it frustrates me a great deal when we have done this and things are taken somewhere else. Look at, y'all, I don't run any other district in this state, let alone in this country, and just so you know, I don't want to. Okay? Like, I don't. You know, look around the nation. You know, just the other day, 25% of superintendents have left the career field again. People in my seat are dropping like flies because of this. These statements that we're all doing it. We've talked with our staff. We've talked with our principals. We have, look, if and you all have heard me say this. The former statesman Howard Baker, you might be right. Give us a chance to look into it. We're going to look into it. If there's there, they're there. If it's not, it's not. But I really want to, and this is just me, I want to get back, folks, like, we got some important stuff we got to get done. And I want to get back to that, and I understand. But when a parent thinks of something, and Ms. V, you've done this with me off and on throughout. Like, if you think it, I'm going to go look at it. Like, I'm not going to tell you no. I'm going to say, okay, well, let's go look. And maybe it wasn't that. Maybe it was this, but we're going to address it, right? But we're getting so caught up in this country and in this state about stuff that, quite frankly, is distracting from the important work that we need to do, which is what Mr. Jarrett and I saw the other day when we got our cup filled, when we went into some classrooms and we went out and saw kids. Like, that's our why. I can tell you that's all their whys over there. Like, we're here to impact kids and to do it in a right way. And you all have heard me say this. Parents are the HOV lane. We've got to stay in a car with a parent. We will differ probably on a route, and that's okay. That's what adults do. But in the end, we're going to try to stay in that car together because we're going to get their child to that destination much faster.
Thank you, Dr. Micah. Any other questions? Yeah, I would say I want to reiterate that I was going to end with something similar, that we want to make sure that we have the voice, and our parents and our community and our students can get access to us. If we hear of things, we need to bring it up. If there's an issue, there's an issue. But I would encourage folks to look to us, ask us questions, look at our websites, visit the schools, talk to your teachers, talk to the counselors, talk to the administrators to find out what your child is doing. Because I think there are a lot of boogeyman things that get thrown out, and we're anticipating things that haven't even happened yet. And so a little bit has to be wait and see, because we don't know what's going to happen in the next 120 days. And at that point, we'll take it in, we'll look at it, we'll be advised on it, and then we can take action at that time if it addresses policy. I want to make sure that we keep that at a policy level and not get bogged down by the day-to-day stuff that our good staff are working on a weekly basis. So with that, Mr. Lopez, thank you for the update. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
And have a good night. All right, item C, we have discussion regarding dress code. I believe at the November 11th meeting, if I'm not mistaken, we had a vote to have a discussion about the dress code and how violations and how they're enforced. And I think we got a couple of emails around that time related to some specific incidents at one of our middle schools. So, Mr. Jimenez.
Thank you, President Byer and Board. I do want to provide a little bit of context, and yes, it was a November 11th board meeting. I want to provide a little bit of context. You all received 2 documents that you have currently. One is called the Dress Code Philosophy. It's got one blue bar kind of up on the top. And this is basically our district dress code. I know there were some questions that came up during November 11th if we as a district have one dress code policy. This is it. And it lives in the student parent handbook is where it lives. And so you can see on it that it gives some general information, and then it talks a little bit about uniforms. And the reason I want to bring up uniforms, we did speak a little bit in November 11th that we do have some schools that have a modified dress code or a uniform. And that typically looks like maybe, I'm just going to, khaki pants and a white collared shirt. And that may be it. When I was a principal assistant principal at one school, we did have a modified dress code. And then when I was a principal, we also had a modified that was there back 2004, 2000. So it's been there for a while, and it's continued that way. And so we'll see that in some other schools. So just want to explain that that's a little bit different than just the traditional, the dress code policy. And so on this, you also see that there's some general guidelines on here, basic principles, certain body parts must always be covered for students, so on and so forth. And when you flip the page, it talks a little bit about what students may wear and what students may not wear or display imagery of. And then it talks a little bit about extracurricular activities and then dress code enforcement. And traditionally with dress code enforcement, there's 3 different things that schools will do. The first one is if we see a student that's out of dress code, a teacher, administrator, whoever it may be, will ask the student to go to the office, and they're offered some type of appropriate, a sweatshirt to put over if that's the case. We can also ask the kids to call a parent if they don't want to wear that, and they say, well, I don't want to wear that, we'll call a parent to say, can you bring appropriate clothing for your student to wear at that time? And so those are the ways that we traditionally do that. Now, if a student repeatedly does that, and let me go backwards and say, when we do that, that's usually not a discipline infraction. Things could have happened, they forgot, whatever. We're going to give them an opportunity. But then after that, if it's repeated, absolutely, it becomes a disciplinary issue where they may be out of the classroom until they can get that right. So that's kind of just traditionally how it happens. So that's that one document. Now, the next document that you have is one that was created based on the concern that came up. And so that way we created this just to talk a little bit more. It does talk about the dress code and how that occurs. If there's any principal that wants to go more specific or goes a little bit more severe in their dress code, they have to have it approved by their campus improvement committee, and then they have to also have it approved by the executive director that's over their school for school administration. Enforcement, we talk about the same thing here. A lot of it goes with communication. We want to make sure that it's in our letters that we send out home in the beginning of the school year. It's part of our assemblies that we talk about. When we meet with parents, we talk to parents about that. Newsletters, emails. I know right now in the spring, traditionally, there seems like once the weather starts getting a little warmer, we needed to make sure that we're revisiting dress code again to ensure that kiddos are there. So this is not a one and done type of situation. As a principal, this happens throughout the school year. It's always something that you're working through. If you flip the page over, and again, this one's on the one that has Northeast Independent School District on top, you all asked for what does it look like with our high schools and middle schools and some of in terms of data. And so this is the data that we have provided for you. We have 23-24 data of violations of the dress code. And like I said, traditionally not the first or second time. This is a kid that's a repeat offender, or their dress code was what they were wearing was so egregious that it went straight to this, right? Because that could happen too. And then we see 24-25. You all have seen the asterisk before when we talk about discipline that we get usually from the state, from TAPR, the TAPR report. And when it's under five or under, We have an asterisk because we also want to be sure that we're not violating FERPA when any kind of situation. So we're following the same model here. So you can see in our high schools, 23, 24, you can see a little bit of a difference. When you go on to the middle school, you can see that there are some middle schools that have a higher number of dress code violations. Those are the schools that also have a modified dress code. So if they're supposed to wear, again, in my example, a white collared shirt and khaki pants, it's pretty easy to see if they're wearing something different. And in that case, that's why typically you'll have that. Like I said, when I was an assistant principal at a middle school and then a principal at one of my middle schools, we had that. So it was simple. We're dealing with that a lot. We're always working through that process. The bottom of that page and then the in the back shows the schools that do have a modified dress code. So you can see there's 2 elementary schools, 5 middle schools, and then you have your NEISD, which is both a middle school and a high school that do have modified dress codes or uniforms. And then considerations, and this, what we put on here is really if there's an issue that we hear about or that we know about, you all are really good about letting Dr. Micah know about an issue that may be having, so that way we can look at it. It's important to know without, having a specific incident or where it may have occurred. It's kind of hard for us to look at all our 68 schools and find out where this can be. But again, being able to, whether it's through you all, whether it's through, sometimes our teacher associations may tell us about an issue, whether it's dress code or something else that we can look into. It gives us the opportunity to really look into it and tackle whatever the issue may be. Whether it has happened or it hasn't happened or looked something different. Either way, we want to make sure that we are supporting our schools. I know our administrators, our teachers, and other staff members work really hard working through dress code and ensuring that ensuring that our kids are following dress code. But it's something that's going to continue. I mean, when I started my career as a teacher back in '95, this is something that we worked through. And is it going to go away 100%? No, but can we minimize the amount of times that it happens? Absolutely. And so we're always working towards that, but a lot of work does go into our dress code, and it's a fight that we're going to continue to have, and we're not perfect by all means, but we're definitely going to be as close to perfect as we can. If there are some isolated incidences of things that we need to look at, we just need to know so that way we can address those. So that's kind of some context for you all. And then I know you all start your discussion when you need to or ask us, Mr. Shoesmith and I, any questions that you may have about these documents.
Thank you, Mr. Jimenez. I just want to make sure we stick to, we've got policies and procedure in addition to the the documents that Mr. Jimenez gave us. There's also FNCA legal and local that talk about student conduct, dress code. So we have sort of a limited scope on what we can really influence with our language, and not get into subjective things we've heard or seen or whatever, but really keep it at our board level that we can talk about. So, Ms. Villarreal.
Have you found that there's a correlation between adhering to a dress code or a modified dress code and behavioral and academic performance? Are there any numbers that we can see?
I'm sure there's probably some numbers that you can see. I don't know if we can prove any kind of causation with that, but I mean, I'm sure we can pull up some numbers for you. I'm not prepared for that type of information today.
Oh, I don't expect you to be. Yeah, this is kind of coming at you. I was thinking, because we do have, some that do have a modified dress code, and it seems to me that statistically speaking, we should be able to see a correlation between, is this school doing better academically? Behavioral issues, are they less, are they more, is there a problem, that sort of thing.
I can go
Mr. Jimenez, if I may, I would just, again, I'm a closet researcher. Just because there's correlation doesn't mean that's the causation of it. And I think that's what I'd always try to remind people, is just because this is that. I mean, look, people with brown eyes and brown hair are smarter than the people that are not. There's actually evidence out there to show some of that. But that doesn't mean that because I have brown hair and brown eyes, I'm smarter. Like that just doesn't, that's just, you can correlate pretty much anything. And so we can take a look at, do the schools that have a modified dress code, are they doing substantially better academically? I don't know that we're going to prove that causation of it, simply because what other things are going on inside of that school, whether it's a character program that they have going or any other, a number of different things. It's going to be very hard to say this led to that. I think that's what Mr. Jarrett and I speak a lot about when it comes to academics, is trying to find the one thing, right, Mr. Jarrett? But to find those things that we know are truly impacting educational outcomes, and then how do we expand that and do it? That proves as a challenge. Correct? Is that accurate?
Aren't there studies out there? Because I've actually read a few that show that there is a correlation between dress code, adhering to dress code, uniforms, and academic, excelling in academics, and also in having less or fewer behavioral issues with kids, because it kind of evens the playing field. So, I mean, I've read some studies like that. So, you know, I'm curious, because I want what's best for our kids, and I want them to get the best education possible. And it seems also that it would reduce bullying if you have a level playing field. So, because there's one thing I do not like is a bully. So I'm just curious. I'm trying to figure out, you know, here we are, we're faced with declining enrollment. We're faced with, you know, fears. That's why I wanted this information from this, because I wanted to, you know, let parents know that, look, NEISD isn't like that. So I want you to understand this. So I'm just trying to figure out, how can we give these kids the best education, the safest schools, the least amount of problems where parents, you know, have to be upset about things. You know, what can we do? And does a modified uniform help with this, you know, to this end?
Yeah, and Ms. Villarreal, I would just say that is why we've left it up to each individual community and school to make that decision about what's best for them. Is that I do not enjoy making blanket decisions that impact our communities, because what we encourage and what we tell our principals to work with their campus improvement committees, which consist of teachers, it consists of parents, and it consists of community members, to have that discussion. And if they believe that has potential impact on it, then by all means they have that right to do it as a local decision. You know, I think there's research out there. I mean, again, I read tons of research, fortunately or unfortunately sometimes. What I always try to do, though, and in fact I asked Deb and Anthony and Rudy to read a book called The Scout's Mindset, because oftentimes we go out and we look and we go out and we have a soldier mindset and we find what we want to find, not necessarily what we need to find. And we've got to really scan that terrain component of it. And so that's something we can explore and we can take a look at it. I know, Ms. Lackhorn, that would be your area to do it. And right now we're kind of tied up with staffing. But we can take a look down at it and see ultimately what's the research across the board. But again, just as I've always been sort of hesitant regarding cell phones, and schools are doing it on their own, quite frankly, and doing a much better job probably than we would do it, because it's those local decisions that are getting to listen to those communities and their unique needs. And that's what I'm always going to go back to, me personally, is encourage those communities to have those discussions. So if there's a parent out there that really thinks they want a dress code at their school, go to that principal and start that conversation, because we have a process to do it. Mr. Jimenez has actually helped guide a school.
Well, that begs the question then, if you're saying if the parents want a dress code, I thought we had a dress code. That we're following.
Saying uniforms. I'm sorry. Uniforms.
I'm going, wait a minute, hold on. That's
my
bad.
apologies. Uniform.
Okay. All right.
I don't know who had it first. We'll go with Ms. Landry.
Okay, thank you. And so I don't want to get in the weeds of the individual schools and what they should and shouldn't do. But I did do a little bit of research also, and what I found is kind of what we've all assumed for years. It's the reason that we have a dress code. It's the reason businesses have a dress code. It sets boundaries and it gives guidance and guidelines. And I think what I just want to get out there and what I want to say is that we've heard enough from enough people about concerns regarding the enforcement. I've had substitute teachers tell me that when they mention something, and I'm talking egregious, I'm talking tube top on a young lady and minimal coverings, and when they encounter that and make a statement and suggest that the individual is sent to the principal or whatever, that there's always pushback because, well, nobody else cares. And so those things are important. And if we have a code, it sends a very strong message to the students if we don't enforce it. It says that we don't care if there's rules. We have more important things. And I've had former principals tell me that they just didn't enforce the dress code. And I'm concerned that we hear it enough and we've had enough people come up and say something about it, that it's worth having a discussion about and worth ensuring that the message is out there that it's important. And that's all I wanted to say.
Ms. Shelton?
Mr. Jimenez.
Yes, ma'am.
There is, and it may be my paper, but there's a star or a dot by Ed White. Is there a reason? It's like my only question.
So is that the asterisk? That
yes, sir.
Yes, ma'am. So that asterisk denotes a number of 5 or less incidents?
Oh, no, sir.
Okay.
Literally by the name White. There, and it may just, so correct me if it's just my paper, but under middle schools, Jackson and then White, and there's a dot that looks like an asterisk on my paper.
I think you were just the lucky one. Maybe there's
That might just be it.
a door prize or something with yours. I don't have that on mine.
Okay. Okay.
I was like,
Oh,
that's
you
not
don't
on,
have it either?
not on mine either.
Oh, okay, well, there you go.
You just got the magic copy. All right. I guess my only comment on this is that thank you for putting the information together based on the request from November. And I think that at least shows kind of what we are looking like the last couple of years with infractions and that kind of thing.
Absolutely, and to what Mr. Lopez talked about earlier is we continually speak to our principals. We talk to them, we remind them about looking into it. If there's an issue somewhere, I mean, if, as board members, if you would please let Dr. Micah know
Yeah.
so we can look into those things.
I was-
Because I think.
I was going to say, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I was going to say that as a board, we need to, if we hear these things, we need to provide that information to the district. We
Because that'll
cannot-
help us. Again, like I said, we're not perfect, and if there's some issues that are out there that we need to address, we're going to address them, but we need to know about them, where they're at, so that way we can help in those situations.
And I guess as individual trustee, I would say, I think, one, I believe we've now, by having this discussion, sort of put administrators on some form of notice that people are paying attention. But I also feel that we need to give our principals and assistant principals some autonomy to do what they need to do at the local level. They know their schools better than we do. We show up every once in a while. We don't have any say in how they conduct their business, and we can guide the policy and the procedures, but they've got to be able to make those decisions on a daily and weekly basis that we aren't always there to see. So, any other questions, comments? All right, moving on. Thank you for putting that together, Mr. Menace. Item 12, new business for possible board action. A, consent. 1, instruction and campus administration. A, school health advisory council, district employee members appointments. B, off-campus physical activity agency certification for middle school. 2, operations, A, open records designation of 10 non-business days. B, Reagan High School HVAC chiller replacement project design, build, bid, award approval. 3, business services, A, over 50,000 purchases. B, interlocal agreement. 4, minutes from February 2025. 5, end of consent. Do I have any trustees wanting to pull an item for discussion?
I would like to pull 3B,
3B.
Which one is that?
the interlocal agreement.
Any other items?
I'd like to pull the open records designation.
That's item 1.
Sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry, 2A. Any other items? All right, do I have a motion to approve consent items other than 2A and 3B?
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Villarreal. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Cox. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Item passes 7-0. All right, we'll go in order. 2, operations A, open records designation of non-business days. Ms. Shelton.
Ms. Caldwell, does this say, my concern is that if we have a weather day, snow days, do we have to count those days, or are they automatically counted? I want to make sure I'm framing this correctly. That becomes a buy for us because we're not in business that day, doing business that day.
Weather days do not count. The law clearly states what are considered federal and state holidays. It puts in code what those are. Weather is not designated as a bad weather day. So let's say we have 2 days of closure because of bad weather. We, as staff, have lost 2 days of processing open records requests.
Okay, so that's my first question. So now my follow-on question is, can we, as a board, put in our, in this designation that we want to include those bad weather days as days that don't count towards your 10?
You cannot exceed the 10 option. So you would, if you wanted to designate a day, you're losing a day. So you can't go above and beyond what you designate, and you have the authority to do up to 10. So anything in addition to that would not be allowed. So you would lose something that we are asking tonight for your recommendation, those other holidays. The other piece is I would want to confer with Rick on if it could be a date that's not actually on the calendar, meaning a pending date, not an official date, because it is our responsibility to communicate to our community when the days don't count. So on our Open Records webpage, for example, there's always this orange box that informs the community of upcoming designated holidays, so that the public is fully aware of how we're counting the days in response to the request. So if you have a future date that's not yet determined because bad weather is not predictable, I don't know if that would be allowable because it's not a specific date for us to communicate. I would want to confer with Rick Lopez about that. But you would be giving up some days in order to give a bad weather day. And honestly, that hasn't been a concern. We are able to continue to process. When we've had bad weather, we've been able to process. The staff who respond to open records requests, who are in the audience, a lot of them who are having to expedite in that situation, they just know they got to get it done faster. There are great people out there who know that they've lost some days, and they just have to turn around that information faster. Finally, I'll say this last thing. We can always request an extension to a requester. If there is voluminous requests that we're not able to get it done in a reasonable amount of time, we can ask for an extension.
Because my concern is that you're not having enough time, right? Which is the question. What happens if someone says no to a request for an extension? Then what do we do?
It's more that we're informing them of the request. They can file a complaint with the AG's office if they don't think that we have been reasonable in our notification or in our timeline. They can always make a request or a complaint to the Attorney General's office.
Okay. But what I hear you saying is if we're not going to make it in the 10 days, we always let people know in plenty of time and give them a new estimate of when we would actually have it for them. And the other thing I hear you saying is if we include bad weather days, that doesn't get you 12, right? It doesn't get you more. So this is probably the best that we can get.
Correct. So for that first part, it is a rare situation that we notify of an extension, but yes, we do that as you explained. And then, yes, you would be not able to exceed 10 designated days.
Okay, thank you.
Would you like to make a motion to approve?
I would like to make a motion to approve the open records designation of 10 days, 10 non-business days in our consent agenda as written.
All right, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Villarreal. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Motion passes 7-0. All right, 3, Business Services B, Interlocal Agreement. Mrs. Landry.
So I just wanted some help understanding this. Can you give me some examples of services or that would be mutual purchases between the CST? I guess I don't understand.
Okay, so an interlocal agreement normally is whenever we're trying to piggyback off each other's bids. And so it opens up 2 pools, right? So the entity that we are partnering with can piggyback off of our bids, and then we can do so the other way around too. So it just gives us that opportunity to do that. In this particular case, we are buying services from a non-profit corporation. And so with FASRAG, which is our Financial Accountability Resource Guide, through TEA, they suggest in order for us to check the box for bid compliance that we have an interlocal agreement with that nonprofit organization. So really what we're doing is we're saying, yes, we are going to be buying services from the Child Bereavement Center, but at the same time, it's also checking the box, the language itself, in the fact that we can share each other's bids.
And so what kind of services do we purchase from the Child Bereavement Center?
So that would be a question for Mr. Shoesmith.
We haven't purchased any services from them yet, but we plan to go into a contractual relationship with regards to counseling for children who've suffered loss, grief counseling, identified through the mental health grant. And these are all mental health grant funds that would be supporting this activity.
And I love this organization. I just have to say, they were great when my husband passed away. But from what I recall is those services were offered free of charge without the district involvement. I guess that's why I'm confused why we're purchasing from them.
So we would have a dedicated counselor for our students specifically. Instead of having to wait into a longer queue of all of the city of San Antonio to go to the bereavement center, we would have a dedicated counselor that's going to work for us for the term of the contract, of the agreement. So they would be coming to on-site campuses and doing like group sessions and individual counseling.
Do they have training that our counselors don't have? Is that why we need to have an agreement with them to from my experience, when my husband passed, we were able to get the services almost immediately.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm just, and it was free of charge, and it wasn't.
Understood. And so these are campus-based activities where they have groups. They can facilitate those on occasion, but they have them in the volume that we're asking for. They would have to hire additional staff member to be able to do that. So we're supplementing that requirement for that extra staff member by our contractual relationship with them.
And we see, and I hate to ask this question, but we see the volume is there to support that.
Yes, ma'am. We've identified in several campuses of where we can target this individual counselor to be able to serve our kiddos.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Ms. Cox, did you have a question?
No.
Ms. Vale, okay. Any other questions? All right. Ms. Landry, would you like to make a motion?
I would like to move that we approve the interlocal agreement. Am I not speaking loud enough? Okay. Item 3B,
All right,
as presented.
Thank you. I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Chidgey. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Motion passes 7-0. Item 13, reports. A, interim financial and management reports. B, awarded bid report. C, second quarter investment report. D, federal grants report. E, open records request report. Those have all been provided to you. Item 14, discussion and possible action regarding board members' requests for items to be placed on a future agenda and/or requests for reports from the administration. Do I have anybody wishing to ask for anything? Mrs. Villarreal.
Okay, I'm not really sure how to do this because you and I had discussed this.
Correct.
And I don't know if I need to put that on the agenda tonight, or if I need to put it on the agenda, then we can kind of discuss it and decide if it needs to be on the agenda.
Yeah, Ms. Villarreal and I, sorry, that was a mouthful, she had mentioned earlier in the meeting about her experience with the STEAM program in the district. And we're trying to figure out the best way to achieve, correct me if I'm wrong, about kind of showing people in the district that this is something that we do, and somewhat promoting it and looking at being able to get it into additional schools. And so if you, I guess somebody correct me if I can't do this, but if we can maybe finish that discussion, because I personally didn't take the time at the end of last week to get back with you to talk about it in more detail, and kind of figure out what your ideas are versus what we think we need to do either at a board meeting or through something from Dr. Micah. If you would allow me to have that conversation with you this week, and then we can maybe figure out the next step, if that's agreeable to you.
Oh, that'd be fine. I
Okay.
just didn't know if I needed to.
No, I think because we stopped sort of midstream on the, hey, look at that, I just worked in stream to that thing. We stopped midstream on that conversation. I'd like to finish that before we kind of go through the discussion and action and all that, if that's okay.
That's
Okay.
fine,
Okay.
because I think
I'd
you had a
appreciate
really good idea, and
Yeah.
it sounded really excellent,
So
and I
let's-
think it might be better than what I was thinking.
Yeah, finish that conversation, and then we'll come
Okay,
back and.
sounds
and-
good.
And brief everybody about what our discussion was, so. Any other trustees? All right, seeing none, item 15, adjournment, and the time is 9:05 PM.